Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NAMI California podcast focused on our statewide annual conference. My name is Marche Pratt. I'm the Vice President of Workforce and Community Engagement, and we're here today to share with you a little sneak peek of some of our wonderful conference workshop speakers so that you can get a feel for what they're going to be discussing and what their expertise is. And I am going to very happily introduce a good friend that I've known for a long time, but it doesn't feel like a long time, and tell you a little bit about my friend David. David Morin is a poet, death doula, and prison rehabilitation facilitator who uses poetry to help people transform existential awareness into meaningful living. Through his Year to Live program and spoken word performances, he creates spaces for authentic expression and healing. His work combines trauma informed facilitation with poetry to help individuals navigate grief, addiction, and life's profound transitions with greater presence and self compassion. Welcome, David. Oh, my goodness. It's been so long since I've seen you. I'm so happy that we're doing this. Thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Marche.
Yeah, I think it won't be a surprise that you're my only friend that is a death doula. I didn't even know that this role existed before you shared in social media that this is something that is near and dear to your heart and you've been a part of for a while. So I wonder if you could share with our audience what that really means. What is your role? How do you go about connecting with families? How do they find you? And what kind of services do you provide?
Yeah, of course. So being a death doula, it essentially means I just help people come to terms with their mortality. If I'm working with someone who is dying, I help them kind of come to terms with any unfinished business, close any loops emotionally. If I'm doing my job right as a death doula, I'm not doing a lot of talking. And so the idea is everyone has their own answers and wisdom when it comes to dying and end of life and grieving. The problem is we don't have enough people in our circles who can tolerate that kind of conversation. So it's hard to find our wisdom if no one can hold the space for it. And so me being a death doula, I can just hold the space and witness anything. And like I said, if I'm doing my job right, the person's going to keep rambling and talking and releasing, and they'll be like, "What happened? Where's all this coming from?" It's like it's been there. You just need
Yeah.
someone who can hold it.
That's
And
awesome that you're able to hold that space and also tap into that. It really requires someone to be incredibly vulnerable with you. How do you build a space in which people can reveal those very private things to you?
um, you know, you can only meet someone as far as you've met yourself. And I have kinda gone to the depths of myself quite a bit, and part of this, I went into, like, a three-day darkness retreat where I just was in a pitch black room for 3 days and just facing all my demons, but also sitting with my grief as well. I've had a lot of losses, and I avoided them for a long time, and I was kind of lost in addiction in avoiding them, and where you finally face it and release it and feel it, then you become lighter after that, and just, like, kinda going through that and going into, like, the darkness literally and metaphorically and emotionally, and what I've really found is it's kind of like you have to sink until you float, but a lot of people are afraid of going under the surface, so they're just, like, kinda flailing out there with their lifeboats on. It's like, "Hey, just get rid of it, sink in, and then, like, it's gonna shoot you back up to the top, I promise."
Yeah, and as we're talking about the analogy sounds so easy. You sink to float. Eventually you float to the top. But there's a lot of fear, maybe some anxiety in the mix there. When you were in that dark space, literally and figuratively, for those 3 days, what really helped you get through that process? I'm assuming you were in that space by yourself. There wasn't another person there. So what was your support or how did you connect? How did you not just get up and walk out after a couple of after a couple of hours? What made you stay and really finish that process?
Oh, I can be very stubborn. And so that has some good positive and some negative. What helped me is I had a profound just kind of awakening in there. I knew that there was an awakening waiting for me, and so I just followed my intuition into it. It was hard. I think like the first day and a half, I slept a lot, but I also was confronted with my own mind, and that was the hardest part. I'd be like, "Well, if I'm waking up, do I wanna exercise first, or do I want to meditate, or do I wanna wait until food gets here?" And I was just in this constant indecision, and until the indecision just became loud because it was the only thing there until I had to confront myself and be like, "What the hell are you talking about? You're in here for 3 days. What does all this matter?" You know? And so, like, finally calming that down, but it was in the darkness that I did a "Who am I?" meditation. I really
Mm,
wanted to know who I was, and I thought it would be like in the movies, where you'll get a crystal clear, loud answer. It's like, "This is who you are, young man." Um, but I sat there and I was like, "Who am I?" And they teach us, at least like kind of here, when you meditate, you just have to let the thought go by and just release it. Don't attach to it. And so I did that. So I said, "Who am I?" And I had like poems come to mind and
mm,
like rhymes. And I'll be like, "Get out of here. I'm trying to meditate. Who am I?" And then like more poems and then "Get out of here," and more poems. And so I finally realized it and said it out loud. Oh shit. I'm a poet. And when I said the words out loud, I had like this huge rush of energy just come through me and it like
mm.
kicked me on the floor and I just started laughing and crying and I was like, "Oh, damn, this is why I came." And so it was very mission oriented of why I went in there and I was like, "I'm not leaving until I get out." So I think that's where kind of that stubbornness is
Mhm.
what got me through.
Used it to your advantage, yeah.
Yeah.
So would you feel comfortable sharing with us, a few verses from, a poem that came out of that experience or something that our listeners could get a taste of, how the arts really, supported your mental health journey?
I would love to. Yeah, I could share a quick snippet of one. It's kind of what I wrote once I left. I wrote one before I went in, and then I wrote one when I left, and this is a
Oh,
shorter
wow.
one.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
but yeah, it goes like this. The darkness was like a mutual friend that introduced me to myself. It gave me a hug and showed me where I lost the remote to my soul. I once threw it into the black hole of yesterday after I put my heart on mute and ate a tub of what ifs while binge watching my regrets. David, are you still watching? No, I'm listening. Thank you.
My goodness. You said into the black hole of yesterday. I was stuck there, the black hole of yesterday, meaning in my heart, when I hear you say that, it means, you know, the past is truly the past. It doesn't have to define your future.
Mm,
But also having the courage to step forward and face yourself. A lot of us don't like confrontation. We're afraid to confront ourselves or anybody else. So the ability to be able to do that and how it sounds like it freed you to really be your authentic self. And one of the things I think NAMI is trying to encourage people to do is not define themselves by their mental illness or their mental health condition, but simply know it's part of their identity. It's not their entire identity, but it is part of them that they don't have to be ashamed of or embarrassed about. And if anything, they could dig a little deeper as to how their lived experience with their mental health can not only help them heal, but help other people. So I wonder, as you are engaging in the arts in your work and in your personal life, what are some of the benefits that you've gotten in terms of what your life was like before you tapped into that and what your life is like now?
that's an excellent question. Thank you. I say it's like a two-part answer, based off experience. One, I had a six-figure sales job, right? And I had everything I ever wanted. And to realize that I wanted to leave that and leave the company car and all of that international territory for poetry, it was debilitating. It's like, "What the heck am I doing?" But I
Mm,
I quit for that, and then I went to a conference a month later, and it's like I could introduce myself as the sales guy even though I just left my sales job. That was the safe identity, right?
mhm,
But I introduced myself as a poet for the first time, and that was so scary for me, but people
mm,
reaffirmed it and received it, and so I stepped into this new identity of David the poet, and with that came so many new opportunities and life and connection, and so what we identify to is extremely powerful, and the second part to that, is with the men I work with in prison. One of the very first things, that I do with one of my jobs at Defy Ventures is we give them a new name. We don't give them a new name, we have them think of a new name, right? Like, the first thing we tell them is like, "You are more than your circumstances, you are more than your incarceration."
Yes.
And so there's more power to you beyond these walls. And so who do you want to be? And we tell them, think of a name of, um, come up with a word that starts with the first letter of your first name or a word that rhymes. Like, who do you aspire to be? You're not your street name anymore. You're not your gang name anymore. Who do you
Mhm,
want to be and who do you want to step into? And so that gets them excited. Oh, I want to be dedicated. I want to be rehabilitated. I want to be determined. And and it works. So, absolutely, if I'm speaking with people who have illnesses, like, yeah, this is just a circumstance. This doesn't have to define all of you and how you show up. It's just one part of you. And if you wanna, like, transcend this and still live with it, but, like, not have it define you and limit you, who is the version of you that does that? What is
mhm,
their name? How do you say their name?
mhm.
You know?
I love that. Names are so powerful, and to be able to name yourself, to choose the name. We don't always get to choose our names, right? When we're born, we're given the name that we're given. This is an opportunity to reframe and rename. I love that.
The
I Oh, go
if I can
ahead.
add one more thing, the
Yes.
reframing part is also important because yeah, if you have the same name and I'll give an example, um, the very first time I shared a poem in public at an open mic, it's actually the poem that this workshop is based off of, Pockets of Joy, but it's about, like, the case study of a rose and a thorn. Right, and how reframing looking at the thorns in life, and I shared at this open mic in LA, and after this woman comes running to me, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, that poem was amazing. My last name is Thorn." And she's like, "And for my entire life, I've just felt so awful about myself because of my
Mm,
last name. I viewed
wow.
myself as the thorn in everyone's
Mm,
side."
mhm.
And I could just see, like, all the pain and tears in her face. I wanna, like, tear up thinking about it now. But she's like, "Your poem made me see how thorns are beautiful, and that's such a gift you've given me. Now I can, like, look at my name differently." And it's like, "Oh." And so, the reframing is just as important. Maybe you don't wanna change your name, but, like, reframe it. There's power in your name too. And I think a lot of times in these days, we focus so much on the negative aspects of
Mhm.
reality, the negative aspects of generational trauma. It's like, "We got blessings too, homies." Like
Yeah, and sometimes it's so hard to see that. I mean, we have so many things to grieve, not just death of a person, let's say, but there's also death of certain dreams, maybe that got deferred or deterred. Let's say that you were a very prominent athlete and you end up tearing your Achilles and not able to continue your sport. There's a grief in that of transitioning because that piece of your identity is going to be different and things like that. And your workshop really focuses on grief, yes, but also finding those pockets of joy. So I was wondering if
Mhm.
you could share with us your definition of joy.
Ooh, that's a very good question. I think joy is a decision. Joy is a choice. And I think it's very important, especially these days, because there's a lot of passionate people about wanting to change circumstances either in their life or around them. And they put the outcome of those changes to decide whether they're going to have joy or not. But it's like you can have joy while grieving. You can have joy while advocating. You can have joy while protesting. You can have joy while going to chemotherapy. I've never had cancer, but one of my best friends has had cancer for 8 years, and she's living her life by joy, and she still has cancer 8 years later. And so it's very much a choice. And what I found, particularly with grief, joy is being willing to feel anything that comes at you as well. You know, with grief, I found that it's like in the depths of your grief where you'll feel the peaks of laughter. And it's like it's a hole that like kind of concaves you in there, but it doesn't just fill with negativity, it fills with life. And
Mhm.
it's just yeah. Yeah, I could keep going on, but I think that
Yeah, I know, we could keep talking, but that's so great. I didn't want you to necessarily have to think of every answer, but I think the core things you shared are so important. And as we wrap up our time today with you, I wanted to give you an opportunity to share with people who maybe are not familiar with spoken word poetry versus just regular rhymes like Shakespeare and things like that. Kind of explain briefly the difference between spoken word poetry and like poetry, like Edgar Allan Poe kind of poetry,
Yeah,
the difference between those 2, and then also, when people go to your workshop, do they have to be a poet or know anything about poetry? Like, who is your audience, for your workshop?
absolutely. So, first, I'd say I view poetry as just the language of truth.
Okay.
It doesn't mean there's syllables or sonnets or any of that kind of stuff. So no, you don't have to be a poet. You don't have to ever have written a poem, and you don't have to be willing to share a poem in front of everyone. That's not what the workshop is gonna be about. So given that poetry is a language of truth, when you when you do it with spoken word and you memorize a piece, specifically when you memorize a piece or if you just go up and let yourself go into the poem, it becomes embodied and the body starts to get involved in the performance.
Mm,
And when the body gets involved, more emotions can get evolved. And like neurologically, your brain is not going to make any changes to yourself or your identity or your feelings until like it gets physiologically included and if it becomes emotionalized. And so what I teach people is to memorize a piece. Because if you're out there reading on a piece of paper, your all of your intention is going into the words and
mm,
trying to remember the words, but once you remember the words and the
mhm,
process of memorizing the words is like,
mhm.
taking that in more and
Yes, that
more.
repetition.
Yeah, it's the repetition of it, and so once you memorize it, then you have the power and those words will move through you and use you, and so I view it as an act of surrender a lot,
Mm.
and my view on poetry is more of that of, it being a medicine more so than an art form.
Love that. Because one of the things that we're really good at doing at NAMI, I feel, is helping people make the space to heal. We're all very busy people. We all have a lot going on, but to just stop and take the time for yourself and know and be forgiving of yourself that you've been through a lot of things, you've survived a lot of things, and there's more things to come, but that you're not alone. And there are many ways that healing can take place. And using the arts is just one of many ways to do it. And like you said, you don't have to be Shakespeare. You don't have to be a pro spoken word poet like yourself. You can just be someone who's willing to put themselves out there and share their experiences and their feelings and let it connect their mind, their
Yeah.
body, their spirit together, and look at the fruit that can come from that, joy and peace and happiness. And that's really what we want all of our listeners to experience. So I'm really excited. This is something new for our conference. I don't know if we've ever had a spoken word poet come
Let's
and do
go.
a workshop just right in this way. So all of you that are coming are in for a treat. David is going to take you on a journey that hopefully will take you to an even higher place. So I'm grateful to you, David, for stepping out there and being a part of it. This is your first NAMI conference. Hopefully, it
Yeah,
won't
I'm
be
very
your
excited.
last. And we will see you very soon. Thank you so much for the special time we had today.
Thank you so much. And if I can add one quick thing for anyone listening or
Absolutely.
maybe they don't attend, I think the one thing I wanted to add to the poetry part is it'll write you if you let
Mm,
it. A lot of
okay.
people will get in their heads of, "Oh, I will need to write the right things," but I also teach poetry in prison, and what I teach them is as long as you start it from a place of honesty, whatever you're feeling, whether it's negative, allow yourself to feel that negativity, but if you allow yourself to go into that feeling, it will write itself because you have so much there, and so, um the first step is being open to
Hmm.
that truth, and if you're never gonna be open to the truth, then it's gonna be much harder to write, but,
Yes.
it like, that's why I say it's like the language and practice of truth.
Yes. All right, everyone. You heard it. This is your homework. Be open. Be open to what the world has to give you and what you have to tell yourself, and eventually tell the world about your experience and hopefully uplift others. Even if you are going through a tough time, you can have the tension of grief and joy um, at the same time. And that's a wonderful, wonderful way to end. So thank you so much, David. And we will see you soon.
Thank you so much, I'm so
Thank
excited to
you.
meet everyone. Thank you
Yes.
for
We're
having me.
excited to have you. Take care, everyone.